he would just curve. He couldn't answer the questions. So we got into thermodynamics. We got into, radiant heat flow. We got into all kinds of things. And then we asked him the one that he just, at the break, he said, please leave.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Editorial Advisor Mike Girton.
Good day, Patrick.
Fine Homebuilding Editorial Director Andrew Zellner.
It is morning here, Patrick.
And our producer, Jeff Rose.
Hi there.
You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here. Mike, you alluded to that where you are, it's the middle of the night, am I right?
Oh, not really. It's 6 a.m., which is already, I get up at 4, so it's the middle of the day for me.
And you're you're there for the Deck Builder show. Can you tell me what you're doing in California?
Well, it's in Las Vegas, my least favorite city to go to. It's called the Deck Expo, and it's co-located with the Pool, Spa, and Patio Show. And it's a trade show for deck builders, of whether they're exclusively deck builders or they're builders who include deck building as part of their overall services. And it's not a very big footprint of the show, but it's, got a concentration of manufacturers, and I'm doing live presentations / trainings on everything deck building, from sizing joists and sizing beams to how to cut stairs for decks and the unique things that stairs on decks have that are different than interior stairs, not code-wise, but more from a construction standpoint, and making sure they're safe to build and walk on.
And how many folks will attend your presentation? And is it a continuation, or are you doing the same presentation over and over?
So the show's over 3 days, and the show hours are kind of condensed from what I'm used to. It's like a 10:30 to 5 kind of show. So I have a series of, I think it's 6 different demos, 5 or 6, and I cycle those so that each demo happens twice over the 3 days. So if people can't meet at one of them, they can pick it up a couple days later.
Interesting. What have you seen out there that you hadn't seen before?
I haven't had a lot of time to walk the show floor, but one product I'm going to go back and look at. It's some kind of so because the pools usually have hardscape involved, so there's kind of this blend between deck and hardscape. But there's a product I saw which looks like an extruded ceramic that they make into long planks, which are used on the surface of the ground. I don't remember the name of it. Addison, who's with me, showed them to me, and so we're going to go back and look at them. But they're spanning a distance. So it looks like they're on sleeper joists that are on the ground, but I'm almost wondering if they could be used on a deck. They're very heavy, so a deck would certainly have to be built to that kind of dead load. But it might be an alternative, and that's what I'm curious to find out. If it's an alternative to all of the other decking products that are either synthetic or wood, as something that's just immune to every kind of attack, both thermally, insect and pest-wise, and UV.
So unlike most hardscaping, which needs to be fully supported underneath, this has the ability to span how far?
That's what I have to go back and find out. We just, Addison said, you got to check this out, and we're going to make a little time today, go dig in. We don't have very long breaks. We have breaks of only about 45 minutes, so we've got to rush out, look at it, and then go right back and get ready for the next prep demo.
Well, that sounds interesting. I'm curious to learn more.
Yes.
Andrew, what have you been up to?
So my wife is an artist, illustrator, and she found a studio space that she's going to be moving into in December. So last night we met with the landlord. She's going to be sharing it with another artist friend. And so it was really funny because Jill and I, have known each other for 15 years, lived together. And she's seen me do all kinds of crazy like projects and knows I have all kinds of tools. And we were in there, and like her new studio mate was like, well, I'd really like some sort of like shelf or like storage thing here, but I'm not sure if I can afford it. I don't know who I'd get to like put it up. And Jill was just like, listen, just let this guy know whatever you want, and he'll do it for you. The most the kind of thing I'm wrapping my head around right now is they want sort of a central like counter height table on casters, and their ideal dimensions are like 6x6. And so like figuring out, like I was just thinking, oh, like, I'll get some 4x8 sheets of plywood, but then it's like, well, we want a nice surface on there. I don't want to spend a bunch of time sanding and finishing something that's just going to, get full of paint. But I also don't want to have to deal with seaming a piece of laminate. So I'm trying to convince him to go something that's 5 feet wide and, up to 10 feet long. We'll see what's going on there. The other thing I'm working on, so I know you guys don't have Menards out where you are.
Sadly, no.
But their last 11% off, so like they've got this 11% off rebate thing that they have done, for years. But during the pandemic, it was sort of like a limited time thing that lasted most of the year. But like this is for real the last week, and it'll go away like through the holidays and beginning of January. So I'm like trying to plan all of the materials I'd like to have for the next 2 months, and figuring out where to store them, and so all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you got to buy stuff that doesn't go on sale, right? That's yeah. Well, that sounds like a fun exercise to spend a bunch of money on building material. I mean,
it's a fun exercise until you get there and you spend the money on the building material, and then have to get it all home.
Right, and store it.
Yeah.
Do you have a truck to haul things?
So I have a Honda Pilot, which I bought specifically because Jill didn't want to have to drive a truck, and it's the only like SUV I could find that wasn't huge, that had a full, I think it's 49 inches in between the wheel wells, so I can slide sheet goods in, and drive with the tailgate open. It can fit a 4x7, so 4x8 it's not a big deal.
Did the Honda dealer give you a hard time when you tried to put plywood in the back of their SUV you were considering buying?
I wasn't able to bring any plywood with me because I didn't have, an SUV.
You didn't take the test drive by Menards to see if you could just like sample a sheet and see.
No, but it was like a frustrating exercise because like I looked at all these cars and like, I wouldn't even like get in or sit in them. I'm just like open up the tailgate and like take my tape measure and measure. And yeah, I've had it, for 5 years now, so there might be something else on the market. But I'm a Honda Pilot man right now.
Jeff, does your Explorer fit plywood?
Not between the wheel wells, but over the wheel wells. And, again, the tailgate has to be open. But
have you had to work on that beast lately?
Not since we last spoke.
Oh my gosh. So Ian sent a query out to the Fine Homebuilding team this week, and he wants to know if anyone out there has installed their own PV system. So I'm spreading the word for him. If you have, he'd love to talk to you about it. He's considering it doing himself, and I consider doing it myself too, because it's a lot of the things I feel confident doing. Some of it I have no knowledge of, but the hard expensive part, I can schlep panels and screw things to roofs.
Somebody recently told me, somebody I know, said, "Oh yeah, I did my own." I got to remember now who did it, because they told me it was like dirt cheap by the time they bought the panels, and they bought some good quality modules and did it all. They had their electrician come in, so there was a cost to that, but it was like at least 40% less than what the installers were getting, which just really upset me, because I had just last October or last spring had my system put on.
I think it's within the skills of anyone who listens to this show, or most folks who listen to this show, right? It's not The systems are worked out.
Are you not eligible for some rebates if you install it yourself?
I have no idea.
It goes state by state by, on how those rebates work with, at least in my local area, because we'll get buy downs or different programs through the local utility. So that would be local by local. As far as I believe federal program goes, you do get those even if you install it yourself. At least according to my accountant, I should say.
It shouldn't
Because
matter.
it was on the energy efficiency side. Like I say, if I install my own, insulation or anything, do my own air sealing, can I take advantage of these tax credits? And he said, oh yeah, even if you do it yourself, that's fine. But you can't
Can you
write
pay
off
yourself
your
to
labor.
do it?
That's the thing, is you can't pay yourself.
Okay.
But of course, I have a corporation and I
You have
work
a
for my
business, yeah.
corporation, so my corporation could do the work technically. But he said, let's not do that. He's very conservative. He doesn't want to flag anything, especially, well, yeah.
Yeah, especially ever.
I better bite my tongue. I don't want to have anybody. We might have an IRS auditor as a listener.
What do you think, Jeff? Do you think that's like something you could handle?
Well, depending upon where it was being installed, I mean, I think my roof would not lend itself well to a self-install.
You'd need to buy like $20,000 worth of equipment, right, to get up there.
Yeah.
But you can
Yeah, my
rent
roof would be easy.
you can rent a lift to get up there, right?
I feel like renting a lift is sort of like an extreme DIYer like rite of passage. I haven't done it. I haven't done it yet, but like I've got some projects where I'd like to do it.
Me too. Instead, I'm like going to borrow a bunch of pipe staging to do my overhangs on the barn. Yeah, I finished the lean-to section. Both the eave and rakes on the lean-to are done, and it looks fantastic. I washed the siding underneath, and I'm delighted. So I'm looking forward to tackling the hard, miserable part, which is way higher and steeper.
Do you guys have snow out there yet?
We had a little like wet flurry event last night that lasted about a half an hour, but then it all melted by morning. So no, not right now. How about you?
Yeah, we got snow, I think Sunday night, and it's like stuck around, and we've gotten more snow since then. We probably have 3 inches on the lawn.
I bet Ian wished he started his building. I asked him about that, and he has not. So can you do footing layouts in the snow, Mike? Have you ever had to do that?
Oh, we've shoveled shoveled properties before in order to start doing the excavation and site layout and all that, surveying, staking.
When will the ground freeze, Andrew, that no holes will be dug in Minneapolis?
Probably by mid-December. Like the ground is still. Actually, I had to like remove and replace a couple of like walkway lights, and it wasn't frozen solid yet, but it's gonna happen one of these days.
One of my stellar moments as a construction supervisor for Habitat for Humanity was getting some of our college volunteers to dig a trench in like really cold weather in January or February. And what I told them was, I was like, well, the ground is only going to be frozen down 2 or 3 inches, and then it's going to be like normal digging. Well, that was a complete fallacy. We had to heat the ground with a burn barrel so they could, dig this. But I tell you what, by the end of the day, they had it done. It was probably, 20, 30 feet long, and gas lines aren't very deep. I think they're 24 inches, but yeah.
I would have thought once they got started, just their body heat alone from all the effort would have warmed up the soil and melted the frost. Oh, that's got to be torturous work. They were probably down to just T-shirts and shorts by halfway through a trench like that.
They were literally using a pick, not a mattock, not a pointed shovel, no, a pick, like with a 1-inch blade, and it was like taking out chunks of rock. Incredible. Young people can work really hard if there's a bunch of them and they're having a good time. I can tell you, it's fun to watch. Speaking of tools, that's going to be the subject of today's after show. So I can't wait. That's like one of my favorite things in life. So it's going to be amazing.
I don't know if we'll have enough time, honestly, to talk about
We
everything.
might have to do it, a regular thing, right?
Yeah.
Especially working towards the holiday season, people are probably out there thinking about shopping for contractor friends and DIYers. So tools are always the best gift to get at the holidays.
Oh my gosh, and it's a great time to get your own tools because stuff is on sale. And you're out shopping anyway, so treat yourself. That's what I say. This comes from Nick. Nick's writing in, oh, excuse me, that's not true. This is from James, and it's regarding the conversation we had in episode 509, the email from Nick asking about his radon in his crawl space. So this is from James in Hamilton, Ontario. Hey, Patrick and podcast team. I recently discovered our 1962 ranch house had moderate radon levels, 600 becquerels per meter cubed, which is 3 to 4 times the recommended maximum level. So have you guys ever heard of the measurement becquerel? I don't even know if I'm saying it right now.
That just sounded like gibberish to me, Patrick.
I had to go to the internet to learn how to say it, and I still don't know if I'm doing it right.
And of course, you have to say it with the French accent too.
Becquerel? Maybe that's how you say it. So we needed to mitigate. 3 years earlier, I had sealed our crawl space with 6 mil poly and 2 inches of EPS on the walls and floor. Like Nick, I had nightmares of the radon mitigation company telling me I'd have to rip it all out. I had done all this work and would have been a heartbreak. My knees and back shuddered at the thought of redoing it too. Thankfully, in my case, the sealed crawl space worked in my favor. Since there was enough communication through the gravel under the rat slab, the only intrusion the installers needed to make in the sealed floor was 5 or 6.5 5 or 6 1/2 inspection holes and 1 6-inch hole for the radon exhaust fan. The sealed crawl space was a benefit in my case because there was less work for the mitigation installers to do, saving me money. Our radon levels are now around 30 becquerels per meter cubed, well below the maximum recommendation. We have a cold air return in our crawl space and no worries about radon spreading through the house. Regards, James. Well, I hope that's helpful to Nick. Thank you, James.
And Patrick, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I know here in the States we use the term picocuries for when we're measuring picocuries per cubic foot at a limit of like, is it 4? Yeah, 4, I believe, is where the EPA lands. What is the limit for becquerels? He said that 30's well under. In his case, I'm just curious what the limit would be.
He said 3 to 4 times the maximum level. So, what is that, 125?
Okay.
Right?
Okay, I guess we can do it that way. Okay.
150?
Okay.
It's 150, right?
Yeah, okay.
Looking at Canada's website, I guess, canada.ca.
What is that, canada.com?
Yeah, well, it's
Canada.ca.
Canada.ca, but they say, look at remediation when you've got above 200 becquerels per meter cubed.
Okay. So that 30 is well under, yes, indeed.
It makes sense to me that made it easier because it was already sealed from the intrusion, right? And now we just need to depressurize to suck it out of there. This comes from one of my favorite builders, Doug Horgan. He writes, first of all, 509 episodes. Wow. And I still enjoy every one. Boy, Doug, that's high praise. Thanks, man. Termites, ran into 2 of them this week. One in my garden where I used untreated 2x4s for parts of our groundhog-proof 6-sided box enclosure. Most of the 2x4s are way above ground, but I put some within a few inches of the dirt. The termites found one and were really enjoying it. The other is on a project where we found a double joist under a bearing wall, which is about 1/3 air, 2/3 wood, and will need replacing. See the video. I would never use exterior foam insulation at or below grade here. Any assembly that can allow concealed access between dirt and wood is definitely going to be a problem. I've worked on a few houses with termite tunnels through foam insulation or behind fiberglass or whatever. One was 3 years old and the foam was riddled with tunnels. My spouse was a little surprised that I was very excited to bring some of this foam home to our house. Virginia and I think several other southern states require an inspection gap at the sill plate in crawl spaces. We typically use fiberglass installed so it's easy to lift and to inspect, which is allowed. R 408.3.1 termite inspection. And here's a code section for you all, where an unvented crawl space is installed and meets the criteria in section R408. The vertical face of the sill plate shall be clear and unobstructed, and an inspection gap shall be provided below the sill plate along the top of any interior foundation wall covering. The gap shall be a minimum of 1 inch and a maximum of 2 inches in width and shall extend throughout all parts of any foundation that is enclosed. Joints between the sill plate and the top of any interior wall covering may be sealed. He says there are a couple of exceptions, or the code does rather. One is in areas not subject to damage by termites as indicated by table R301.2, or 2, where other approved means are provided to inspect for potential damage. What do you think that is? Like a little camera? You have to be able to look at it, right? Mm-hmm. Where pier or curtain foundation installed as depicted in 404.15, the inside face of the rim joist and sill plate shall be sealed, shall be clear and unobstructed except for construction joints which may be sealed. Exception, fiberglass or similar insulation may be installed if easily removable. Well, that's cool. So it's what we suspected, right? That you need to leave this open so people can see what's going on. Mm-hmm. Doug also writes, I was also interested in the large hole in masonry discussion. I recently put 2 8-inch holes in my brick and block foundation for an ERV, which I swear I will install one of these days. My plan was to drill 12 little holes and chisel out the rest. But we have a 4 1/4 core bit, and I used that to drill 4 big holes instead of a lot of little ones. It worked really well. I did both holes in just over an hour, including dust collection setup in the basement. Also, a guy I work with showed me something really cool. He has a 6-inch diamond core bit he runs on a normal cordless drill. He uses some kind of water setup. He says it's not fast, but it's surprisingly smooth and cheap process. Bits can be found for under $200. Having said that, we normally hire these out to a core drilling company as suggested. Yeah, that's how you do that, right? What do you think he's talking about, this like homebrew core bit 6-inch hole saw thing? That's a big hole for a cordless drill. Like,
yeah, that's
especially
what I'm thinking.
in
What
concrete.
kind of punishment it does on the drill body itself and the battery. You know, if you keep running those and it heats that battery up. I got to talk to a battery expert from one of the tool companies to find out, because when we start running some of those drills and you just keep running it and keep it under load all the time, and you can really feel that battery heat up. Are we damaging the lifespan or the lifespan of the battery or anything like that?
Modern batteries have circuitry to prevent damage, but I don't think old batteries do, or cheap batteries. You know, that's definitely one of the ways you make them less expensive is you scale back on their self-protection features. So one of my things to talk about in the after show is one of my favorite tools for drilling concrete and masonry. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. We heard from Jonathan. Last month, you asked listeners to share their workshop setup and supplies. At a minimum, I like to keep materials on hand to operate all my power tools. For example, if you have an air tool, you need fasteners for it. I always keep tapes, glues, batteries, nails, and screws in good supply. I find boxes to be an efficient way to organize materials for different jobs. If I'm working on an electrical project, I grab the electrical box. I keep conduit, junction boxes, wall plates, switches, and receptacles on hand. I also have boxes for plumbing, doors and windows, wall repair, sanding, etc. Shelf space has a section for glues, lighting, tapes, and paint. I secure the door to the workshop and keep chemicals on the top shelf. I keep scrap wood organized with a separate bin for small offcuts. I do that too. People think I'm nuts. I use drawers for screws and nails, batteries, baby proofing, personal safety gear, and so on. Precious wall space is covered with pegboard for clamps, hand tools, and the like. Power tools sit on a shelf with some more stored below. It all makes sense to me. Fixed tools include a drill press, miter bandsaws, router table, planer, and grinder. I could use a table saw but don't have the space. The central HVAC and big water heater compete for my workshop. Most fixed tools have dedicated dust collection, or I can attach a flexible hose from my main dust collector. I could have it organized better, but I had to add storage solutions incrementally as the collection grew. My wife will tell you 10% of my tools are in the living area at any given time. It's my way of showing her I'm working on something. Thanks, Jonathan. That's awesome. What do you guys think? Did you see his setup?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Efficient for a small space.
Super tidy, right? Super tidy.
It
looked comfortable too. Like, I would like to spend time in there. You guys could have guessed, right?
I've seen a lot of like very beautiful like woodworking shops that almost feel like the person who owns or operates them is more of like a professional like storage solutions consultant than like a woodworker, because it's like so fun to like organize, build these things. But his shop, I think, like looks used and lived in and still organized. And it was sort of like that good balance between cleanliness and like inspiration, creativity kind of thing.
I've heard folks describe woodworker shop as those used by woodworkers, or those like just as shops, as a space to sit in and enjoy. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but there definitely seems to be a difference between the two.
This time of year, I always think about my scrap wood stack and pile, because like I usually clean it out kind of at the beginning of woodworking season, which for me like starts kind of in the spring when it's warm enough to be in my shop without running crazy heaters and stuff. But like right now, I'd say like I've got way more scrap wood than anything, and you know, you try to organize it, and then it's just like at some point you gotta get rid of stuff you're not going to use, because otherwise you're just spending all your time moving scrap wood around.
You need a wood stove, man. That's the secret.
Yeah. It like during the summer and even fall, like we do like fire pit outdoor stuff, and you know, burning beautiful pieces of, you know, cherry scraps and walnut.
It costs like $8 a board foot, right?
Yeah, it's just like there's nothing useful for this, but yeah, it's a little disheartening. I follow a YouTuber in Japan who has a couple of like sawdust stoves that look really cool. That like I also like have to dispose of massive amounts of sawdust. So someday we'll have that totally self-sufficient wood shop heated only by the scrap wood and sawdust.
The listeners have sent us links to those sawdust stoves. It's a pretty incredible thing. Yeah,
it really is.
This comes from a GBA Q&A post that I mined for the podcast show because it was such a good question, and I'm hoping that listeners of our show have further thoughts on this topic of discussion. So let's get to it. This is, I hope everyone is doing well. Just wanted to see if I can get a little advice. I'm looking to add an additional bedroom to my house, and I've talked to several architects. So far, I've not met a single designer that was able to look at my layout and give me an opinion on what is the most economical way to add space, or they want to add on to the project to make it bigger than it actually needs to be, telling me I must make my kitchen bigger as well as you might as well get approval for the work at the same time. I also feel that they don't have the skills for more creative ways, such as bumping out a cantilever over the existing foundation to save on the overall cost. Are there experts in this line of work, maybe resources I can read, or architects that may not be local but can provide online services? Maybe I'm skeptical, but I feel that the architects I meet are chasing after the larger jobs. maybe because they will have more work to do and can charge a larger fee. This is also based on locality, but with a bump out, is the permit process less expensive? I'm getting a minimum architectural fee of $13,000 to add one room. Wow, what do you guys think?
It sounds like a lot for adding one room.
What's your fee?
What do you mean?
What would you charge
To build it or to
to design it?
to design it? You know, I would say most of the projects I've done similar to this, where you're either reconfiguring a room or adding a small addition, I've always done the design work myself. And then if I need to, as a builder, build or remodel it, and then if I need to bring in a design person, we'll bring them in, and it's more to focus on exterior aesthetics, making things balance on the outside. And so, and they're fine with that. I've got a small group, about 3 or 4 designers and 2 architects that we can tap into it. So I already have a network of people that we can bring in, and their fees are very reasonable. You know, usually a couple of $1,000s, because they're not doing an extensive amount of work. They're not doing site supervision where they're coming out and reviewing the work in process. Although they are fortunately available. Hey, we're running into this. You know, what do you think? We're not going to be able to make these things go together the way you had designed it. I don't know if it's a matter of shopping around, and on the doing it online, I imagine there's somebody you can do it online, but really you've got to, I would think somebody would need to be there on site and walk the space and walk the exterior to see how things would be put together. It'd be kind of hard to do over a FaceTime or something.
I totally agree, and I'm sure there's folks who are listening to the show would say, well, you can do that all virtually now, but I don't know. It's not the same as being in a space. Anyone who's like in the building world will tell you that's not the same. Jeff, do you have thoughts about? Go ahead, Andrew. You can go first.
I was going to mention, starting it. It almost feels like you should find a builder you'd like to work with or want to work with, and then find the architect that builder likes working with. I think when you start with the architect, there's just like so many unknowns, and especially if you don't go in with an idea of what you'd like, you're looking for the best idea. That's an easy way to burn a bunch of time, and get a bunch of quotes for things you have no interest in doing.
Or can afford in this case, right?
Or can afford, yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to make a plug for a website called Matriarchy Build, which was started this spring, but it's a collection of female identifying professional tradespeople, including a handful of architects and builders and general contractors, where you can book a consultation for half an hour or an hour, and it's a few $100, but you get to talk to somebody, a third party, who wants to help you do the best project you can. You probably won't be in the same location as them, but it's a good place to at least kick around ideas and find advice. Much like our podcast is, but you get to book a one-on-one. So
cool.
It sounds like an excellent idea.
Yeah, totally. Jeff, do you have thoughts on this?
My only thought was, maybe a design build firm might be a better fit than an architect.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I was going to suggest anyone in the pretty good house arena is a good start, right? Anyone who espouses the pretty good house ethic of construction would be a good fit for a designer, in my estimation. Mm-hmm. Like Mike Maines. Call Mike Maines would be my final advice, just because I like his designs, and he's so practical. Like, he can do anything, but his, he wants to make things that work. This comes from Ron. Hi, podcast. I've written in a couple times and appreciated your thoughtful responses. This isn't really a question, but I wanted to I wanted to pass on a product I just became aware of from the Green Build Expo that just finished in San Francisco. I don't have any connection to the product. It's a thick paint which both waterproofs and insulates walls and floors. It's hard to believe, but they claim that a thick paint coating provides R8 insulation and waterproofing and can function as a floor. It's also a salad dressing. It's a little unclear on coverage and paint thickness, but I think the cost is around $2 per square foot. The reason I wanted to share this as a potential product for the endless number of questions related to treating cold, wet basements. The website shows a bright white color, but this is to reflect sun. It can be tinted for indoor use or to absorb more sun. I'm considering this as a roofing product for the concrete house I'll be building. Thanks, Ron. So, insulating paint, what do you guys think?
Well, before we even get to the insulating paint, it's absolutely sad and disgusting to me that the company that manages Green Build would even allow a company like this to exhibit at the show.
It tells you what it's really about, right?
And I actually have a connection to the company, the managing company. So I got to talk.
I didn't know you were in the paint sales business, Mike. But
no, I mean not the paint sales, the exhibition company. So I'm gonna talk to some of their salespeople and say, look, guys, if you're running a show called Green Build, you really got to focus on what the effort is here.
Or change the name. Oh, yeah, so my favorite way to answer this question is to mention a couple of links that are on GBA, written by my esteemed colleague, Martin Holliday. And my favorite is insulating paint salesman is tripped up by his own product. And oh, my God. So it shows
look at
photos
the picture
of this.
of that attic. Yeah.
Oh, the attic. Do you want to describe the attic, Andrew? That's the best part of it.
I mean, it looks like a framed attic that's been lightly frosted. No, there's no insulation in it.
It's got shiny paint in it, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is the
looks very
same
clean.
company. Yeah. I think this company has just changed the name of the product. I really think it's the same. But Martin has a second article that we'll link on the podcast page that is about how these companies dupe people who don't know any better into thinking this is insulation, and it's not. It's not insulation. It's paint, and it might have something magical in it, but someone's going to have to prove to me that it works because no one has been able to prove it so far.
So I have a short story. Several years ago, these companies, as well as the ones that do the radiant barrier film that they drape over the insulation, tell you it's going to put the number 80 to your insulating value of your attic. They do free seminars where you get a lunch or a dinner, and they do them locally. And a forensic engineer friend of mine, David Grandpré, who's written some articles with the magazine, he got invited to one in our area, and so he said, Mike, let's go have some fun.
Oh, no.
So we had a few of us went, and we started asking questions, and the guy had his script, and he would just curve. He couldn't answer the questions. So we got into thermodynamics, we got into radiant heat flow, we got into all kinds of things, and then we asked him the one that he just at the break he said, please leave. We asked him the question, so what testing company did you use to evaluate the R value of your product, and which of the ASTM standards did they follow to do that test? And we had asked this in front of a bunch of people. Fortunately, at an earlier break, a lot of the other guests who were there came up to us and they started listening to what we were saying, and we informed them that this is, bogus and don't spend the money, because it was like a $5,000 charge to go and do an average attic, which was just outrageous.
That's a shame.
So I went to the website, and immediately, there are red flags. Like any company worth their salt. I'm not going to say Fine Homebuilding has a fantastic website by any means, but there's an About Us page. If you if it's not clear who owns the website, where the products come from, like everything should have, an SDS sheet if you're looking at paint. So at the building science symposiums this year, there was a lot of discussion about testing and ASTM. And the way I always remember the acronym is another stupid testing method, which is one of my favorite takeaways. But like, we have companies that test these things rigorously in a scientific method and prove them. So insulating paint isn't a thing.
It's not a thing. If you're, spacecraft is re-entering Earth's orbit, it's the perfect thing for reflecting, that energy that way, but it doesn't work on your house. Oh. It's troubling that these things, like, keep re-emerging. It doesn't go away, and there's still a third link I'm going to put on the podcast page that talks about the FTC's role in enforcement, so that these companies cannot make these bogus claims. But as you might imagine, it's hard to track them down. So I say, if you see this stuff out there, tell the FTC.
Yeah, is there like a phone number you call or something?
We have to get that from Martin Holliday. He was on a first-name basis with the poor, beleaguered FTC worker whose job it was to enforce the rules on R-value claims. This comes from Chris. Hi, I was watching something about 80s tech for energy-efficient homes, and they were talking about the inefficiency of fireplaces. But they had a unique feature to mitigate some of the effects. A floor duct with an adjustable blower was positioned just in front of the fireplace, and the idea was it could be turned on and adjusted to bring in outside air and feed the fire. Do you know if this is still around? Was it actually helpful in increasing efficiency? I'd think the blower fan maintenance and the fact that you're just blowing air in the general direction of the fire and not in a closed system would be the main drawbacks. What are your thoughts? Thanks for what you do, Chris. He saw this on This Old House Season 5, Episode 4, around the 17-minute mark. So those of you who have the This Old House Roku subscription, you can look this up and see for yourself. He had a screen capture that I will put on the podcast page, so if you all are curious what this thing is. But it looks like a floor register, right? And anyone has seen this thing before?
I've never seen one in person, no.
You've heard of them, though?
I mean, like, folks tried this with wood stoves, right, to get a pipe to provide combustion air for super tight houses. But I think the problem is generally that then you have this giant connection to the outside that's, cold and uninsulated, right, because it has to be open. So
For many years now, the building codes required, if you do a fireplace in a house, especially now as homes have gotten tighter, we have to bring fresh air into the chamber, the firebox, from the outside. And then we have to have a sealed base, or sealed front on the the wood stove, not the wood stove, the fireplace, so that now the combustion air comes in and the exhaust gases come out. So there's not any communication, or not much communication, between the inside the firebox and the living space, so that you can have the combustion and not be drawing on the interior air, and then not having enough to support the combustion, and then smoke and fumes coming back in and so on.
And do the same rules apply to open fireplaces, Mike? Can you build an open fireplace anymore?
I don't believe you can. It says you have to have a sealed. I'm going to have to go read the code language to be specific, but I'm pretty sure you have to have a sealed, like glass in the front of the fireplaces.
There's probably good reasons for that. The libertarian side of me says, like, stay out of my fireplace, assuming it's not unsafe. But they're a huge energy suck. Literally, they suck all the heated air, conditioned air out of your house. James writes, Dear FHB Podcast, your podcast is an excellent ambassador for the FHB brand. I love listening to the banter and appreciate the congeniality of the group. Boy, that's never a word I would have expected people would use to describe me, but awesome. Thanks very much, James. That's kind. The building science world, your show included, regularly emphasizes the need to manage bulk water. You also highlight the roof as the most important part of the structure for this purpose. The peel and stick competition is heating up with Huber and their zip peel and stick membrane for the entire roof deck. Is there a consensus that these membranes are the gold standard? I propose that for every time you discuss a Sandpoint well, the aesthetics of ICF foundation walls at grade, or backup generators, you could give us some tidbits on competent roof waterproofing. I'd love to hear more about the material costs, the different methods for waterproofing penetrations, practical benefits of different pitches, why anyone thinks that a flat pitch roof is a good idea, overhangs. My list is lengthy. Do you think that's a dig on me? Anyway, for today's show, could you kindly discuss one question? Is there any reason not to use a peel and stick ice and water shield product on your entire roof other than the cost? Thank you for all you do, and a special shout out to Jeff for his benevolence every time Patrick drags him into the conversation.
So we'll start with Jeff.
Well, you are indeed benevolent every time I drag you into the conversation, Jeff, so thank you. Oh, do you guys think? We talk about roofs a lot, I thought, but maybe not enough compared to other stuff. You're the roof guru, Mike Girton.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So to answer the question, well, I wouldn't consider, we could do a whole series of podcasts talking about all the things that James has brought up, because there's a lot in there about the roof and all of the points he brought up. But the short question, is there a reason not to use peel and stick ice and water shield product on your entire roof other than cost? Well, there's no reason to not use it. So there's not any downside to it. A lot of early on, when people started putting peel and stick on older roofs, there was a concern that now you're going to block any vapor transmission up through the roof sheathing and then through the roofing material, figuring that it was asphalt shingles with some tar paper down, and that you get condensation. It was going to rot the roof sheathing, but that's going to be a problem whether you put the peel and stick down or not if you don't have good attic ventilation and you have moisture coming from inside the house into the attic. So that becomes a non-issue. That's a moisture management and air sealing issue from the communication between the house and the attic space, and then ventilation if needed. So that's not a problem. But is there a real benefit to doing it? I think that isn't really brought up in James's question, but is there really a benefit to putting peel and stick on the whole roof? And there's a variety of opinions, but it gets into a deep discussion. My short answer is, why bother unless you have a reason to put peel and stick on the whole roof?
Resilience would be, I think, the most common reason folks would give why to do this. And I certainly know when you build in cold, wet places, sometimes, you need a temporary roof, and that stuff is very reliably waterproof for weeks or months. And that's another reason I've known builders to do that. To, if you're building a room addition or whatever and you can't get the roof on right away, it's a good way to temporarily keep it dry.
And I would counter that with, instead of using peel and stick, just use a good synthetic underlayment and install it according to the manufacturer's installation instructions, and that will be as waterproof for the period of time that you need it to be waterproof, rather than going with peel and stick. The downside of peel and stick is you can put on 2 layers. That's it. So you peel and stick your roof. Next time the roof gets stripped, they can put 1 more layer. It has to be the exact same brand and model of the original peel and stick that went down. That's a problem that nobody pays attention to. Then that second layer goes down.
This is totally the first time I've heard this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's why I say this opens a whole series of, podcasts topics we can do. And then so the second time you re-roof over that second layer of peel and stick, when you strip that one off, you have to pull all your roof sheathing off unless you can pull off the
Good
peeling
luck.
stick,
Right.
which is why I like the Florida method. You can't, in Florida, you don't bond the peel and stick to the roof sheathing. You put down tar paper, fasten it down 1 inch on center with cap fasteners, then you put the peel and stick on top of that. That way you've got a bond break. It's still getting the benefit of it, that not the self-adhering part of it, but you're getting the benefit of the self-sealing to the penetrations. But then when you re-roof, you take all of the old stuff off and you put a new layer down. It's kind of like the old days before there was peel and stick back in the 60s and 70s. Even into the early 80s, the way we made an ice barrier membrane was we put down 15-pound tar paper, then we take some thinned down trowel consistency asphalt plastic cement. We put that over the tar paper. We put another layer on top of it. We made a sandwich of asphalt goo, and then we'd roof on top of that. And then that could come up after when it was time to re-roof.
So James was talking about material costs. You suggested the synthetic roof underlayment. Is it a significant savings compared to a peel and stick membrane to use underlayment?
A little
bit.
savings. Yeah, not a great savings. Depending on, it's all brand model. You know, you can get some very reasonably priced self-adhering membranes, the granular sand-coated ones versus the film plastic-coated ones or the fabric-coated ones. So, and some of the premium synthetic underlayments can be pricey. So,
yeah. What were you going to say, Andrew?
So I've been studying up on the fortified roof standard, and so I went there, you know, and the thing they emphasize is not necessarily peel and stick over the whole roof, but it's taping your sheathing seams, and that, you know, like in the cost benefit thing, that feels like a much more cost approachable way to get a similar level of protection.
I think we all agree on that
Yeah.
those products have made this practice largely unnecessary, right? Because they're tough and those tapes are sticky. Works well.
Yeah.
Works well.
and the point there being what you're saying, Andrew, is you tape all of the joints in the sheathing, either at OSB or plywood, and now in the event of a catastrophic failure of the roof due to some wind or something, hard tornado or hurricane, now all the joints are sealed, so 99.9% of the water will be blocked from getting into the house because main avenue is through all the joints.
That makes so much sense to me. And, the insurance business, like they do things for good reason, right? There's a reason that they want you to do that.
The other, I think, the idea of maintenance in 30 years when you're replacing your roof is something a lot of folks don't consider when they're thinking about building materials. They want something that's going to like really stick and be hard to get off. And like, if buildings are going to last a long time, they need to be maintained. And that maintenance thing is something that you may not think of now, but 30 years from now, either you or that new person is going to be thankful you made a smart decision.
What's the rationale for only 2 layers of the peel and stick membranes, Mike?
It's in the building code, and I don't think it's enforced because it's like a lot of things that end up in the building code. Was some logic when somebody presented that proposal, and all of the officials that were voting members at the time said, yes, this is a good idea. But that doesn't trickle down to us. Like, why is that a good idea? And I think we're going to have to investigate that a little bit more.
Because it's not weight. I mean, because you can have 2 layers of shingles or slate or, of course a roof has to be designed for slate, but, I don't know. That's weird to me. And my gosh, peeling that stuff off sounds just dreadful. Have you ever had to do a lot of it?
Me removing it?
Yeah.
I just pull when I have in the past because of some problems with the peel and stick and oozing, and then dripping down because there's periods of time where the chemistry just wasn't quite dialed in when they manufactured it. So we just pulled the roof sheathing up. It was easier than messing with it. We just cut on the joints of the sheathing, and we just get, our roofing shovels and just pop the sheets off. And that was back when, OSB and plywood were, $5 to $8 a sheet. So it was pretty easy compared to the cost of, it was actually more expensive for the self-adhered membrane than it was for the sheathing at the time. So different world now.
A code question for you folks. Glenn Mathewson was presenting at the symposiums, and he's, very passionate about like any individual has just as much standing to modify the code as any manufacturer or lobbyist group. And like, have you guys ever submitted changes to the code that you'd like to see or thought about doing that?
It's funny you bring this up. I had a look. Go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to say this should be your flag to bear, Andrew. You should be the take this up with the Code Council.
So,
I'm really hung up on air admittance valves for plumbing. They're not part of the Minnesota plumbing code.
You're not allowed to use them?
You're not allowed to use them. You can buy them at Home Depot down the block, but you're not allowed to use them. And I haven't gotten a good reason as to why, other than that you're not allowed to.
So that's interesting because what you bring up brings up a two-stage process. There's the code development, the model building code for what we do in the residential is the International Residential Code. And what Glenn primarily talks about is we can submit proposals to the ICC for new code changes to the International Residential Code or the IBC. Then the second stage is when a jurisdiction, either a state, county, or town or city, depending on who adopts the codes in your area, there's usually a process where they take the model building code and they make amendments to make it more user-friendly for the local building people. Because you might, like in the Northeast, we changed the geometry of stairs. You have a higher run and a shorter tread than what the code calls for. So in your case with the air admittance valve, there must be a process that goes through there. So you could, instead of meeting on a national basis, you could go and talk to the local authorities and see what that step would be. And I just did this about a year and a half ago when my state was adopting a code. They're adopting the 2018 code at the time, and it was open for comment period. And I wrote in a comment about the change they were going to make, and and I don't know if I was influential in that, but they did what I was recommending rather than what they were going to do. So it was kind of cool, to be able to have a part in that.
Well, and it was just like Glenn's whole thing was like, if you see something that you don't agree with, you can get involved. And
if you don't like it, do something
change.
about it was his takeaway, right? It's like,
yeah.
I agree with you about air admittance valves too. It's a wonderful problem-saving product, and they are, for some reason, home inspectors don't like them. Also, in my experience, like I had to change one in my old house to satisfy the buyer's home inspection, and what cracked me up is
when you say change it, did you have to remove it and replace it, or did you have to put in a true vent?
I had to connect the bathroom vent to the existing stack is what I did. And I'm sure I could have made another penetration, but another penetration in a roof is not a good thing. There's tons of air up in the attic. This thing was fine, and it was sized for the entire bathroom. Their diameter is dependent on how much air they need to allow in. It's a great thing. It's silly that you can't use those.
I follow a home inspector specifically. He's a Minnesota home inspector, and every year, he posts his yearly update, and it's just like Minneapolis still has not allowed for air admittance valves, but he's done a bunch of independent testing, backyard kind of stuff, and it's a thing. I don't know, is it like a labor savings thing? It like doesn't seem like a safety issue anymore.
Uh, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think that the worry is that it fails and allows, sewer gases into your living space. And, well, I mean, traps rot out. And, it's like...
Lots of other things fail, and we maintain and replace them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe in the requirements for installing them is that they're in an accessible location. Right. And when I've installed them, we just put in a little access panel from the backside of a closet, and it may be forgotten by future homeowners, but if a plumber came out to investigate a problem, they'd be looking around and they'd probably discover that there's the valve, and yep, we just got to swap it out. And it's just it's a threaded fitting. It's in and out in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
easy fix.
They're like the Studer ones, the original ones, are really reliable. I've never heard of anyone having a problem with those. Don't get me started, you guys.
We'll save that for the after show, Patrick.
Speaking of the after show, it's going to be a discussion of tools, our favorite tools, things that don't live up to expectations. I had thoughts on inherited tools and things that you don't use but still love. So it's going to be a fun conversation. I can't wait. So stay tuned for that, members only after show. You guys have anything to say before we go?
I'm just excited to talk tools. It's going to be a lively conversation.
Can't wait. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to all of you for listening. Thanks to Andrew, Mike, and Jeff for joining me. And thanks to all of the members who have Fine Home Building memberships. Stay tuned for the after show. And please remember to send us your questions, suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Happy building. Thank you very much for listening.